At 4:11 in the morning, Mara Ellison opened her front door and found 200 men standing in the rain. They filled both sides of the narrow Philadelphia street like shadows given bodies. Black suits, black coats, black umbrellas, black SUVs parked bumper to bumper along the curb, headlights glowing through the silver curtain of rain. Men stood beneath flickering street lamps and beneath the dripping awnings of closed shops. They watched the roofs, the alleyways, the windows, the parked cars, every place danger could hide. Mara stood barefoot in the doorway of her old row house, one hand gripping the doorframe, the other clutching the medical bag she had slept beside like a weapon. Her heart climbed into her throat. For one horrifying second, she thought they had come for her. Then a tall man stepped out of the nearest SUV, Rafael DeLuca, even wounded, even pale from blood loss, even with one hand pressed beneath his ribs where her stitches had failed to keep his life from spilling out. He moved like a man the world had learned not to question. Rain slid over his black coat and dark hair. His face was sharp, controlled, unreadable. His eyes found hers through the storm, and somehow the chaos around them went silent. "You should be inside," he said. Mara stared at him. Behind him, armed men turned their backs to her house, forming a wall between her and whatever waited in the dark. "What did you do?" she whispered. Rafael's expression did not change. "What was necessary?" Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. "There are men on my roof." "Yes, there are men at both ends of my street." "Yes, there are men standing outside Mrs. Dunnerly's bakery like they regarding the president. She makes good bread." Rafael said calmly. Mara almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because her mind had reached the edge of fear and found nowhere else to go. She took one step outside. Cold rain hit her face. "Why?" she asked. Rafael came closer, and only then did she see the strain beneath his control, the thinness of his mouth, the blood darkening the edge of his shirt beneath his coat. The wound she had stitched only hours ago had reopened, but he did not look down at himself. He looked only at her. "Because Mara," he said softly, "someone used you to find me." A chill colder than the rain moved through her, and now, his eyes lifted past her shoulder, scanning the upper windows of her home, the dark street, the line of men waiting for his command. "Now," he said, "they will learn what happens when they touch what I protect." Mara should have slammed the door in his face. She should have called the police. She should have run upstairs, packed a bag, and disappeared into the city before sunrise. Instead, she looked at the blood on his shirt and heard herself say, "Your stitches are tearing." For the first time since she had met him, Rafael DeLuca almost smiled. "That is your main concern. You re-bleeding on my porch. You are in danger. You re-ruining my welcome mat." His eyes darkened with something dangerous and almost tender. "I will buy you another one. I don't want anything from you." His gaze held hers, I know, and somehow that was the most frightening thing he could have said. 26 hours earlier, Mara had never heard his name. She had been standing beneath the fluorescent lights of St. Agnes Medical Center. 5 hours past the end of her shift, with aching feet, a stiff neck, and coffee so burnt it tasted like punishment. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic, rainwater, old fear, and blood. Mara had stopped noticing most of it years ago. She had been a trauma nurse for 6 years, long enough to understand that people entered hospitals as strangers and left as stories. Some survived, some did not, some screamed, some prayed, some grabbed her wrist and begged her not to let them die. And Mara, tired as she was, always stayed. That was her talent, staying, even when she had nothing left. Mara Dute 11 called from the nurse's station, sliding a chart toward her without looking up. Curtain 6. "I'm off. You were off 2 hours ago. That's my point. Male patient, possible knife wound. Refusing police. Refusing attending physician. Says he'll only let a nurse clean it." Mara stared at him. Dute 11 finally looked up. His glasses slipping down his nose. "I know, but we have 3 incoming from a pileup on I-95. And he's bleeding quietly instead of screaming, which means he's currently my favorite patient." Mara took the chart with a sigh. "Name? Wouldn't he give one? Of course not. 2 men brought him in." "What kind of men?" Dute 11's mouth tightened. "The kind that makes security suddenly remember they have paperwork in the basement." Mara glanced toward curtain 6. The curtain was drawn all the way around the bed, which was unusual. In the air. Privacy was a luxury people lost somewhere between the insurance forms and the plastic bracelet. She grabbed a suture tray. Sterile gloves, saline, gauze, antibiotic ointment, and a face calm enough to hide the exhaustion pulling at her bones. Then she walked toward curtain 6. The moment she stepped close, the air changed. It was ridiculous. Air didn't change because of a patient. Rooms didn't grow quieter because one man sat behind a curtain. But the closer Mara came, the more the noise of the air seemed to fade behind her, the crying child, the beeping monitors, the low voices of families trying not to panic. She knocked once on the metal rail. "Hello, I'm Mara Ellison. I'm the nurse they sent because apparently you're allergic to doctors." Silence. Then a low voice answered, "I am allergic to incompetence." Mara paused. His voice was calm, controlled, and faintly accented, with a rough edge beneath the elegance. It sounded like expensive whiskey poured over broken glass. "Well," she said, pulling the curtain aside, "then you're going to hate American healthcare." 3 men were inside. 2 stood near the wall in dark suits, broad-shouldered and silent, hands folded in front of them. They did not look like family. They looked like exits that had decided to become human. The 3rd man sat on the edge of the bed, and Mara forgot, for half a second, how tired she was. He wore a white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar. The left side soaked red beneath his ribs. His suit jacket was folded neatly beside him, as if he had removed it before bleeding out of politeness. His dark hair was pushed back from his forehead. His jaw was clean shaven. His skin had the warm olive tone of southern Italy, but his eyes were colder than anything in the room. Gray. Not soft gray, steel gray, storm gray. He looked up at her, and the full weight of his attention settled on her face. Most men in pain looked desperate. This one looked inconvenienced. "You are not a doctor," he said. "You are observant. I requested a doctor, and then refused the doctor who came to see you. So now you have me." His eyes moved over her face. Her wrinkled scrubs, the loose strand of brown hair escaping her bun, the shadows beneath her eyes. "You look exhausted." Mara set the tray down harder than necessary. "You're bleeding through an $800 shirt. I don't think either of us is presenting our best selves tonight." One of the men near the wall shifted as if offended. The wounded man lifted one hand. The bodyguard went still. A small silence followed. Then, slowly, the corner of the wounded man's mouth moved. Not a smile exactly. More like his face remembered the possibility. "What is your name again?" "Mara Ellison." He repeated it once quietly. "Mara Ellison." The way he said her name made it feel less like information and more like something he had decided to keep. She snapped on gloves. "I need to see the wound." His gaze did not leave hers. "Leave us," for one strange second. She thought he was speaking to her. Then the 2 men in suits stiffened. "Boss, leave." One word softly spoken. "Absolute." The men obeyed. Mara watched them disappear beyond the curtain, and her knees crawled up the back of her neck. She had treated gang members, drunk executives, overdose patients, men who lied about gunshots and women who lied about bruises. She had learned to recognize danger not by volume, but by silence. This man was all silence. She turned back to him. "I am going to ask you standard questions. You're going to answer them honestly, or this will be very annoying for both of us." His eyes narrowed with faint interest. "Do you always speak to patients like this?" "Only the ones who bleed mysteriously at 2 in the morning. Then proceed. Name." A pause. "Raphael, last name." Another pause. "Not relevant. Everything is relevant when I am putting a needle into your skin." "De Luca." Mara wrote it down. "Age, 38. Allergies? No. Medications? No. Did someone stab you?" "Yes." "With what?" "A knife." "What kind?" His eyes flickered. "The sharp kind." Mara looked at him over the chart. He looked back. She set the chart aside. "You know what? I'm going to clean the wound now. Try not to be dramatic that time." He did smile. Barely. But it changed his face in a way that made Mara's chest tighten without permission. She hated that. She stepped closer and began unbuttoning his shirt when his fingers closed around her wrist. Not hard, not painful, but complete. Her pulse jumped beneath his touch. His hand was warm, strong. Calloused in places expensive men's hands usually were not. Mara looked down at his fingers, then back at his face. "Let go." His eyes searched hers. Most people looked away when Raphael De Luca studied them. Mara did not. After a second, he released her. "You are not afraid," he said. "I'm very afraid," she replied, peeling the blood-soaked fabric away from the wound. "I just don't have the energy to perform it for you." Something shifted in his gaze. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. The wound was deep, a clean slash running beneath his ribs. It had missed anything vital, but not by kindness. Blood welled as she cleaned it, warm against her gloved fingers. "This needs stitches." "Then stitch it." "Do you want anesthetic?" "No needles." Mara looked at the open wound, then at his face. "You understand the irony of refusing needles while letting me sew you shut?" "I understand many things. Apparently not basic pain management." His mouth softened again. She threaded the suture needle. "This is going to hurt. Pain and I are old friends." Mara began the first stitch. He did not flinch. Not on the first, not on the fifth, not on the 10th. But his eyes never left her. That was worse than flinching. His gaze was too steady, too intimate, as if the small space between them had narrowed until there was no hospital, no curtain, no fluorescent light. Only her hands, his blood, and the silence neither of them seemed willing to break first. "Your stitches are precise," he said after a while. "My grandmother was a seamstress. She taught you. Before I could write my name, a useful inheritance." Mara tied off another stitch. "She hoped I'd use it on wedding dresses." "Did you?" "No." He heard something in the answer. His expression changed slightly, but he did not push. She appreciated that, against her will. When she finished, she cleaned the area, applied antibiotic ointment, and bandaged him with firm, efficient movements. "Keep it dry for 48 hours. Change the dressing daily. No lifting, no fighting, no dramatic entrances into dark alleys. You have many rules, you have many ways to reopen a wound." "I'll remember." "No, you won't." Rafal stood. The room immediately felt smaller. He was tall, several inches over 6 feet, and the kind of power he carried did not need height, but used it anyway. He reached into his coat and removed a money clip thick with $100 bills. Mara stepped back. "No, you haven't heard the amount. I don't need to. You need money." The words landed too close. Her chin lifted. "You don't know anything about what I need." His eyes moved over her face. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet." He took several bills and placed them on the tray. Mara picked them up and put them back in his hand. "I don't accept cash from patients. Consider it gratitude. Consider me employed by a hospital." He watched her for a long second. Then he slipped the money back into his coat. "A rare thing," he murmured. "What?" "Someone who refuses what they clearly need." Mara pulled the curtain aside. "Good night, Mr. DeLuca." He stopped beside her, close enough that she could smell rain, blood, and expensive cologne. His gaze dropped briefly to the loose hair near her cheek, but he did not touch it. Almost. The restraint was somehow more intimate than contact. "You should go home, Mara Ellison. You should go to a follow-up appointment." "I don't go to hospitals. You're currently in one. Not for long." Before she could answer, the two men in suits returned. One held Rafal's coat. The other scanned the hall before stepping aside. Rafal looked back once. The look lasted only a second, but Mara felt it long after the curtain fell closed. By sunrise, she had convinced herself he was just another strange story in a job full of strange stories. By noon, she knew she was wrong. Mara lived in a narrow brick row house in South Philadelphia, the kind with old pipes, thin walls, and a front step cracked down the middle. The house had belonged to her grandmother before dementia took her memory, and a care facility took what remained of Mara's savings. It was not much, but it was hers. That morning, after a 16-hour shift and a bus ride through gray rain, Mara reached her street and noticed the black SUV parked across from her house. She slowed. The windows were tinted. The engine was running. She walked past it with her keys clenched between her fingers. No one got out. Inside, she locked the door, slid the chain into place, and stood very still. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Finally, she answered. Mara Ellison. The voice on the other end was not Rafal's. It was older, rougher. "Miss Ellison, Mr. DeLuca requires medical assistance." Her blood chilled. "I don't know any Mia DeLuca. You stitched him last night. Then he can go back to Stagn's." "That is not possible." "Then call one of the doctors on his payroll." A pause. "He asked for you." Mara laughed once, humorless. "That sounds like his problem. He has developed complications. Again hospital, he want ego. Then he is stupid, another pause. Then the older man said, he said you would say that. Mara closed her eyes. Of course he did. I'm hanging up now. Miss Ellison, there are things you do not understand. I understand that I am not getting into a car with strangers. The voice lowered. Then understand this. The men outside your house are not the only men watching you. Mara stopped breathing. She moved slowly to the front window and parted the curtain. The SUV still sat across the street. But farther down, near the corner, a man in a grey raincoat stood under the awning of a closed pharmacy. He was not looking at the SUV. He was looking at her house. Who is that? She whispered. That, the man said, is why Mr. DeLuca sent us. An hour later, Mara was in the back seat of a black SUV, furious, terrified, and holding her medical bag so tightly her knuckles ached. No one blindfolded her. That almost made it worse. The city slid past in wet streaks of neon and grey stone. They drove north, then west, leaving the tight old streets behind for long private roads lined with iron gates and winter, bare trees. The DeLuca estate sat on a hill overlooking the dark curve of the Schuylkill River. It was not flashy. That was the first thing Mara noticed. It did not scream wealth. It whispered it. Dark stone, tall windows, iron balconies, a long drive bordered by black cypress trees, security cameras hidden beneath old architecture, men stationed in places normal people would never think to look. Mara stepped out of the SUV and felt the weight of the house before she entered it. Inside, the air smelled of cedar, leather, smoke, and money old enough to have forgotten its origins. A silver-haired man waited in the foyer. He was broad, thick through the shoulders, with a scar cutting through one eyebrow and eyes that missed nothing. Miss Ellison, he said, I'm Matteo. You were the one who called. Yes, you threatened me. I informed you. You were all very annoying. His mouth twitched, so Mr. DeLuca said. Mara hated that Raphael knew enough about her after 20 minutes to predict her reactions. Matteo led her up a wide staircase to a bedroom larger than her entire first floor. Raphael lay propped against charcoal pillows, shirt open, skin pale beneath the warm tone. Sweat darkened his hairline, his bandage was soaked through. Mara forgot her anger for 3 seconds, then it came back sharper. You absolute idiot. Raphael's eyes opened. Fever bright, still steady. Mara, you tore the stitches, I had business, you had a knife wound, both required attention. She dropped her bag beside the bed and snapped on gloves. You are either incredibly arrogant or actively trying to die. Many have tried to help me with the second. Her hands stilled for half a beat. Then she looked at him. Something dark moved behind his eyes, there and gone. Mara turned to Matteo out. Matteo blinked. I beg your pardon. You heard me. Raphael watched her with faint amusement. Matteo looked to him. Raphael gave a small nod. The older man's jaw tightened, but he left. When the door closed, Mara peeled back the bandage. The wound was angry, swollen and beginning to show signs of infection. Her stomach dropped. You have a fever. Yes. Redness spreading. I noticed. Drainage, also noticed, and yet instead of getting actual medical care, you sent men to drag me out of my house. I asked politely. Your version of politely has armed vehicles. His gaze rested on her face. You came. You implied someone else was watching me. Someone was. Why? That is what we are determining. Mara removed the damaged sutures with tight, controlled movements. The work was ugly, painful, necessary. Raphael's jaw clenched, but he made no sound. She cleaned the wound, packed it, started antibiotics from the supplies his men had somehow obtained, and hung a saline bag from a carved bedpost, because rich criminals apparently had everything except common sense, and if stands. You need hospital-level care, she said. I have you. I am not a hospital. No, he said quietly. You are far less irritating. She shot him a look. His mouth softened. Mara hated the small warmth that moved through her chest. Do you flirt with all your nurses while septic? Only the ones who insult me. That's not flirting, that's survival. His eyes lingered on her. For both of us, perhaps, the words unsettled her. So she focused on his pulse, his temperature, his blood pressure, things she could measure, things that made sense. When she finished, she stepped back. I'll stay until the antibiotics are running properly. Then I'm going home. No, the softness vanished from his voice. Mara's spine stiffened. Excuse me, You will stay tonight. No, I want tea. You may be in danger, because of you. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes tightened. Yes, the honesty stole some of her anger. Not all, but some. I didn't ask for this. I know, I don't belong in your world. No, Raphael said. You do not. Then let me leave. For the first time, Raphael looked away. That frightened her more than his stare. Not until I know who watched your house. Mara crossed her arms. You don't get to decide that. His gaze returned to hers. In my world, Mara, danger does not ask permission. And in mine, neither do men who think protection gives them ownership. Silence filled the room, heavy, sharp. Then Raphael said very softly, I do not own you. No, you don't. But if someone means to harm you because of me, I will stop them. That sounds noble until you remember I'm standing in your bedroom, because your men scared me into a car. His face hardened, not at her, at himself. You are right. Mara had not expected that. Raphael slowly shifted, as if to sit up straighter. Pain flashed across his face before he buried it. I did not handle this correctly. No kidding. But I will not apologize for keeping you alive. Her anger faltered again. She wished he were crueler. It would make him easier to hate. Instead, he was terrifyingly calm, terrifyingly controlled, terrifyingly sincere, and wounded. That was the problem. Mara had always been weak for wounded things that pretended they were not bleeding. She stayed. One night, she told herself. Only one, at midnight, Raphael was sleeping under the pull of antibiotics and exhaustion. His breathing finally even. Mara sat in a chair beside the bed, charting his vitals on a notepad because she did not trust herself to sit still without purpose. Rain tapped against the tall windows. Beyond the glass, she could see men moving along the grounds with silent precision. Matteo entered without knocking. Mara looked up. He is stable. For now. The older man nodded. His eyes moved to Raphael. And for a moment his hard face softened with something almost paternal. How long have you worked for him? Mara asked. Since he was 17. That's not what I asked. No, Matteo said. But it is the answer that matters. He came closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. You should know what kind of man you are near. I have a pretty good guess. No, Matteo said. You don't. Mara looked at him. Matteo's voice lowered. Raphael's father ran this city before him. Powerful man. Too proud. Too trusting of old agreements. Victor Belandi's father betrayed him. Sent men to the De Luca home during dinner. Raphael watched his mother die in the foyer. His father in the dining room. His younger brother on the stairs. Mara's hand tightened around the pen Raphael slept on, his face unreadable even in dreams. He was 17. Matteo continued. He survived because he stopped being a boy before the night ended. Mara looked down at the man in the bed. Power made more sense now. So did the loneliness around it. That doesn't excuse what he does, she said quietly. No, Matteo replied. It explains why he does not let anyone close enough to become a target. His eyes found hers. Until you. The words moved through the room like smoke. Mara stood. I'm his nurse. That's all. Matteo said nothing. But his silence was worse than argument. The next morning, Mara woke in the chair with a stiff neck and a blanket over her shoulders. Raphael was awake watching her. She sat up too quickly. How long have you been staring? Long enough to know you frown in your sleep. I was probably dreaming about unpaid bills. Those have been handled. The room went cold. Mara stared at him. What? Your rent is paid for the next year. Your grandmother's care facility has received funds anonymously. Your student loans stop. Raphael did. Mara stood slowly, the blanket falling from her shoulders. You investigated me. Yes, her face burned. You had no right. No, you paid my bills. Yes, without asking. Yes, her voice shook. Do you understand how violating that is? His jaw tightened. I understand that your landlord sent a final notice 3 days ago. I understand that your grandmother's facility was preparing to move her to a lower care unit because of missed payments. I understand that you have been choosing between food and prescriptions. That is my life, she snapped. Not yours to fix. Something like frustration crossed his face. You would rather suffer than accept help. I would rather choose who gets to help me. That landed. Raphael went still. Mara grabbed her bag. I am leaving. You are not safe. I am not safe here either. His eyes darkened. I would never hurt you. No, she said, voice breaking despite herself. You would just rearrange my life until it fits inside your version of protection. She turned toward the door. Mara, she stopped. His voice had changed, not commanding now, not dangerous. Almost human. I do not know how to protect gently. She closed her eyes. The confession was not enough. But it was real. And because it was real, it hurt. When she opened the door, Matteo was waiting in the hall. His face was grim. Miss Ellison, he said. We found something 5 minutes later. Mara stood in Raphael's study while Matteo placed her medical bag on the desk and removed a small black disc from the seam beneath the lining. A tracker. Mara's stomach turned. Raphael stood behind the desk, pale but upright, one hand braced discreetly against the wood. His eyes were no longer human. They were cold enough to make the room feel dangerous. This was transmitting from the moment she left St. Agnes, Matteo said. Mara stared at the device. No, someone placed it in your bag before you treated him. Matteo said. Mara's mind raced backward. The crowded air, the chart, the curtain. The stranger in the grey security uniform near the staff entrance who had asked to inspect bags because of a new protocol. Her breath caught. There was a guard, she whispered. Didn't he recognize him? Raphael's gaze sharpened. Describe him. Tall, light hair, scar on his neck. He said it was random screening. Matteo cursed under his breath. Raphael said one name. Belandi. The name made the men by the door shift. Mara looked between them. Who is Belandi? Raphael turned the tracker between his fingers. Victor Belandi controls what remains of the old families south of the river. He has been trying to locate 3 of my private properties for months, and I led him here. No, Raphael said. He used you. The correction was immediate, almost fierce. Mara swallowed. Why would he use me? Because I do not bring outsiders into my home, Raphael said. Ever. The room went silent. Mara looked at him. His face revealed nothing, but Matteo's did. Just enough. Mara understood. She was not just a nurse. Not anymore. She was an exception. And in Raphael de Lucas' world, exceptions were dangerous. That afternoon, Raphael moved her to a different property, not the estate, not her house. A safe house hidden above an old private medical clinic near Rittenhouse Square, sealed behind a locked elevator and guarded lobby. The rooms were luxurious but cold, all marble and glass, with views of the city blurred by rain. Mara hated that she was impressed. She hated more that she was scared. Raphael should have been in bed. Instead, he stood near the window, speaking quietly into a phone, his reflection dark against the storm. Mara watched him from across the room. He was powerful. That part was obvious. But now she saw the cost of it. Every call he took was controlled violence. Every pause carried calculation. Every man who entered lowered his voice like they were in a church built for dangerous gods. And yet, whenever Mara moved, Raphael noticed. Every time. If she reached for coffee, someone brought fresh coffee. If she rubbed her arms, the heat rose. If she looked toward the door too long, his gaze followed, and the guards outside shifted. Protection, possession. The line between them was so thin she could barely see it. By evening, his fever spiked again. That finally made her angry enough to forget fear. She marched across the room, took the phone from his hand, and ended the call. Every guard froze. Raphael looked down at her. Mara looked up at him. You are going to bed. A deadly silence followed. One of the guards took a small step forward. Raphael lifted one finger. The man stopped. You ended my call, Raphael said. Yes, that was unwise, so is dying upright because your ego 1T let you sit down. His eyes narrowed. Mara jabbed a finger toward the bedroom. Move. A long moment passed. Then Matteo, standing near the doorway, cuffed into his fist. It sounded suspiciously like laughter. Raphael's gaze cut to him. Matteo looked at the ceiling. Then Raphael looked back at Mara. You are very comfortable giving orders. I'm a nurse. People are stupid with their bodies. And you believe me stupid. I believe you are a man with an infection pretending he is a monument. Something flickered in his eyes. Not amusement this time. Something quieter. He obeyed. The guards stared like Mara had just moved the moon. She followed him into the bedroom, closed the door, and changed his bandage in a silence too charged to be peaceful. The wound looked better, not better. You scared your men, she said. They scare easily. No, they done tea. Raphael's mouth curved faintly. Mara taped the bandage down. Your fever is still too high. You worry. I monitor. You worry, he repeated. She looked up. He was watching her again with that unbearable steadiness. The room felt too warm, too small. You need rest, she said. I need many things. His voice was low. Mara's pulse betrayed her. She stepped back, but the bed was behind him and the window behind her, and there seemed to be nowhere in the room where his presence did not reach. I'm not one of your things, she said. His expression changed instantly. No, the word was quiet, firm, almost angry, never that. Mara believed him. That was the danger. She looked away first. Later that night the first attack came. Not with guns, not with explosions. With a phone call. Mara's phone rang from a number she did not know. She answered before thinking. Mara Ellison, a male voice said, older, smooth, almost kind. She froze. Raphael, who had been sitting at the table across the room reviewing documents despite her threats, looked up instantly. Who is this? Mara asked, a friend of a friend. Raphael stood. Mara's grip tightened on the phone. The voice continued, you have found yourself in the wrong house with the wrong man. Raphael De Luca has a habit of destroying women who mistake his cage for a castle. Mara's blood went cold. Raphael held out his hand for the phone. She did not give it to him. Who are you? She demanded. The man chuckled. Ask him what happened to Elena Moretti. Raphael went still. Completely still. Mara looked at him. For the first time since she had met him. His face showed fear. Not for himself. For what she had just heard. The caller laughed softly. There it is. The silence. He has not told you about her, has he? Raphael's voice was deadly quiet. Hang up, Mara. But Mara could not move. Ask him. The voice whispered. Ask him what happens to women he protects. The line went dead. Mara lowered the phone. The city glowed beyond the windows, cold and distant. Elena Moretti, she said. Raphael closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the wall was back. She is dead. Mara's chest tightened. Who was she? My fiancé. The words hit harder than Mara wanted them to. She looked away. It was stupid. Irrational. She had known him for barely more than a day. She had no claim on his past, no right to feel the small sharp sting of it. But she felt it anyway. What happened? Raphael's jaw flexed. I protected her badly. That's not an answer. It is the only one that matters. No. It's the one that lets you punish yourself without telling me the truth. His gaze snapped to hers. There was anger there, and pain beneath it. Elena was promised to me when I was 26, he said. A business arrangement between families. She did not love me. I did not love her, but I respected her. I thought that would be enough. Mara listened, arms folded tightly around herself. Bellendi wanted to weaken my alliance with her family. He took her from a charity gala, sent me a choice. Surrender the port contracts or receive her body. Mara's throat tightened. What did you choose? Raphael's eyes were flat. I chose war, silence, and Elena. She was dead before the message arrived. His voice did not break. That made it worse. Bellendi made sure I would spend the rest of my life wondering if a different choice would have saved her. Mara's anger softened despite herself. I'm sorry. Do not be. Pity is useless. It's not pity. What is it? Then, she looked at him. In the dim light, with fever beneath his skin and ghosts behind his eyes, Raphael De Luca looked less like a monster than a man who had built one around himself to survive. It's grief recognizing grief, she said. The words changed something in the room. Raphael looked at her as if she had reached through armor he had forgotten he was wearing. He took 1 step toward her. Mara did not move. Then a shout came from outside the room. Raphael turned before the door burst open. Matteo entered, gun drawn, south stairwell breached. Raphael moved instantly. Mara grabbed his arm. You are not going anywhere. His eyes cut to her. For 1 second, they stood so close she could feel the heat of him. Then he did something she did not expect. He pulled her behind him. Not roughly, not dramatically. Simply instinctively placing his body between hers and the door. Stay behind me, Raphael, now, Mara. The command in his voice left no room. Gunfire cracked somewhere below. Mara's body went cold. This was not a story anymore. Not a dark hallway. Not distant danger. This was real. Men shouting, glass breaking, boots pounding on marble. Raphael guided her backward toward a concealed panel near the bedroom wall. Matteo covered the door. There's an elevator behind this wall, Raphael said. It takes you to the garage. Matteo will get you out. What about you? His eyes met hers. I will end this. No. A flicker of impatience. Mara, you can barely stand. I can stand long enough. Gunfire sounded closer. Mara grabbed his shirt, careful of the wound, but desperate enough that he looked down at her hands in surprise. You don't get to drag me into your world and then bleed out in it. Something fierce and vulnerable flashed through his eyes. Then the outer door exploded inward. The next few seconds became fragments. Matteo firing, Rafael turning, a man in a grey tactical mask rushing through smoke. Mara stumbling backward. Rafael's arm around her waist, pulling her down as bullets shattered the window behind them. His body covered hers as glass rained across the floor. His breath hit her ear. Are you hurt? She could not answer. She could only hear his heart pounding against her back, steady, alive, furious. The attackers never reached her. Rafael's men flooded the room from the side hall in less than 30 seconds, moving with terrifying coordination. The fight ended quickly, brutally, mostly out of her sight, but she saw enough when silence returned. Rafael was still holding her, too tightly, as if letting go would require more strength than surviving the attack. Mara, he said, I'm fine. His hand moved to her face, stopping just before touching her cheek, almost. He pulled back. That restraint broke something in her more than the touch would have. You bleeding? She whispered. Not badly, don't lie to your nurse. His mouth curved faintly, but his eyes stayed dark. Never the safe house was compromised. By dawn, Rafael moved her again. This time, not to another mansion. To her row house. Mara stared at him in disbelief when the convoy pulled onto her street. You brought me home. For now, why? Because you accused me of turning protection into a cage. She looked at him. He looked exhausted. Pale, in pain, but steady, so I am putting the choice back where it belongs, he said. With you. The SUV stopped outside her house. Mara did not move. Rain streaked the windows. Her street looked the same and not the same. The bakery on the corner. The cracked sidewalk. The crooked mailbox. The life she understood, but black SUVs followed behind them. Dozens men stepped out into the rain. More arrived from both ends of the block. Mara's lips parted. How many? In Rafael. 200. She turned to stare at him. You surrounded my home with 200 men. His face remained calm. Belandi attacked a secure property with inside knowledge. Until I know who betrayed me. You stay somewhere familiar, and my men secure the perimeter. You say things like that as if they are normal. They are normal to me. That's not reassuring. No, he said softly. I imagine it is not. Mara got out of the SUV. Rain touched her face. Neighbors peeked through curtains. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Men in black suits moved into position with military precision. And Rafael stood beside her, one hand pressed discreetly to his ribs. Her anger should have risen. Instead, she felt something far more complicated. Because she understood what this was costing him. Not money, not manpower, control. He was placing his fear in the open for every enemy to see. His weakness was no longer hidden. It had a name, Mara Ellison. Inside her house, everything looked too small. The kitchen table with one uneven leg. The chipped mug near the sink. The old blanket folded over the couch. The stack of medical bills she kept meaning to organize and never did. Rafael entered carefully, as if stepping into a church. Mara noticed. It disarmed her. You can sit, she said. He looked at the old couch. I may break that. Despite everything, she laughed. It surprised them both. The sound was brief, cracked with exhaustion, but real. Rafael looked at her like he wanted to memorize it. Mara looked away, kitchen chair, then he sat. She changed his bandage under the yellow kitchen light, while rain tapped against the windows, and 200 men guarded her ordinary little life from the dark. The intimacy of it unsettled her more than the danger. Here, in her kitchen, Rafael de Luca looked impossible. Too elegant for the peeling paint. Too dangerous for the floral curtains her grandmother had sewn 20 years ago. Too alive in a house where Mara had spent years feeling like a ghost. His eyes moved over the room. You grew up here, mostly. Your grandmother raised you. Mara paused. You read that in your file? Yes. At least you are honest. I am trying to be. That made her look at him. His face was serious. No charm. No deflection. Trying. The word should not have meant anything. It meant too much. My grandmother used to make soup every Sunday, Mara said quietly, surprising herself. Even when there was nothing in the fridge but carrots, onions, and stubbornness. Rafael's gaze softened. She sounds formidable. She was. Mara taped the bandage down. Now some days she thinks I am her sister. Some days she thinks I'm a nurse at the facility. Some days she doesn't know me at all. I'm sorry. She expected the words to sound polished. They did not. They sounded careful. Mara swallowed. I hate when people say that. Then I will not say it again. No, she said after a moment. It's okay when you say it. Their eyes met. The kitchen seemed to shrink around them. Raphael lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to move away. She did not. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Nothing more. A touch so light it barely existed. Mara closed her eyes anyway. When she opened them, his face was close. Too close, not close enough. Then headlights swept across the window. Raphael turned instantly. The softness vanished. Matteo entered through the front door without knocking. We found the leak, he said. Raphael stood. Mara stepped back. Who? Matteo's expression hardened. Drea 11. Mara went cold. No. Raphael looked at her. She shook her head. No, he's annoying, but he's not. He gave Belandi access to staff schedules, Matteo said. Security rotation. Her intake records. He knew Raphael would be brought there eventually. Mara felt the room tilt. Drea 11. Who had joked with her? Covered shifts. Signed forms. Accepted coffee she bought from the vending machine. How much? Raphael asked. 2 million. Mara's voice was barely there. He sold me. No, Matteo said. He sold information. Belandi used you. But it felt the same. The betrayal hit somewhere deep. Not because she loved Dar. 11. Not because she trusted him with her life. Because he belonged to her world. The normal one. The safe one. And suddenly it looked just as cruel as Raphael's, only less honest about the weapons. Mara sat down. Raphael crouched in front of her despite the pain it cost him. Mara. She shook her head. I keep thinking your world is the dangerous one. His gaze held hers. It is. So is mine, she whispered. It just wears hospital badges. His hand covered hers, warm, steady. She should have pulled away. She did not. At 900 that night, Victor Belandi called again. This time, Raphael answered. He put the phone on speaker and set it on Mara's kitchen table. Belandi's voice filled the small room like poison poured into wine. Raphael, surrounding a nurse house with soldiers. How romantic. Raphael's face revealed nothing. You attacked a medical safe house. You brought an outsider into our business. I brought a nurse to treat a wound. You brought a weakness into the open. Mara's throat tightened. Raphael looked at her, then said calmly, yes. The room went still. Even Matteo looked at him. Raphael continued, and if you mistake her for leverage again, I will burn every Belandi property from the river to the port. Belandi laughed. You always did confuse violence with love. Raphael's voice lowered. No, I confuse threats with invitations. The line went quiet. When Belandi spoke again, the amusement was gone. Midnight, Pier 47. Come alone. Or I send your nurse the good doctor's confession in pieces. Mara stood. Drute 11. Raphael's jaw tightened. Belandi heard her. Ah, Miss Ellison. Still alive, that is impressive, considering the man beside you destroys everything he touches. Raphael reached for the phone. Mara stopped him. Her hand closed over his. Then she leaned toward the phone. Mr. Belandi, a pause. Yes, nurse. If Dar 11 is alive, keep him that way. Belandi chuckled. And why would I obey you? Because Raphael De Luca is listening, Mara said, her voice steadier than she felt. And from what I've seen, he becomes very unreasonable when people ignore my instructions. For one stunned second, no one spoke. Then Belandi laughed softly. Well, he said, perhaps I underestimated you. The call ended. Raphael stared at Mara. What? She asked. His eyes burned. You should not provoke men like him. I learned from watching you. That is not comforting. No, I imagine it is not. Matteo made the mistake of smiling. Raphael shot him a look. The smile vanished. Mostly, Raphael did not go alone to Pier 47. Of course he didn't. He went with a hidden perimeter. Snipers on warehouse roofs, men in boats beneath the pier. And Mara furious in the back of an armored SUV. Because she had refused to stay behind, and he had refused to let her come until she threatened to reopen his stitches herself. This is reckless, Raphael said. You want to talk. You are not trained for this. I'm trained to keep reckless men alive. His eyes cut to her, including me. She looked out the window. Unfortunately, the power was drowned in fog. Philadelphia's riverfront looked like another world at midnight, all rusted metal, wet concrete, orange industrial lights, and black water moving beneath the docks. Belandi waited near an old warehouse with 6 men and Dra. Levin on his knees beside him, face bruised, hands tied, Mara's stomach twisted. Raphael stepped from the SUV, calm as death. Mara watched through the tinted glass. He looked larger in that place, darker, not like the wounded man in her kitchen, not like the patient who almost smiled at her insults. This was the Mafia boss, the man men feared. And she understood why. He did not raise his voice. He did not posture. He simply stood in the fog. And the entire pier seemed to arrange itself around his danger. Belandi smiled. You came, you asked, for a man who betrayed you, for the woman he betrayed. Mara's breath caught. Belandi's gaze flicked toward the SUV. Raphael's voice turned lethal. Look at me. Belandi looked back. The negotiations lasted 7 minutes. Mara could not hear all of it. Only pieces through the comm Matteo reluctantly let her listen to. Shipping routes, port access, debt forgiveness, blood payment. Then Belandi said, and the nurse. Raphael's silence was terrible. Belandi continued, she walks away from you, publicly, permanently. I want it known that Raphael De Luca's little weakness was temporary. Mara's heart pounded. Raphael looked toward the SUV. Through the dark glass, somehow, his eyes found hers. Then he said no, one word, not loud, not negotiable. Belandi sighed. Then perhaps she dies with your pride. A gunshot cracked. The window beside Mara shattered. Matteo pulled her down. The world erupted. Gunfire tore through the fog. Men shouted, tires screamed. Raphael moved through the chaos toward the SUV, not away from it, gun in hand. Coat whipping behind him. Mara saw him take a hit to the shoulder. He barely slowed. Another man lunged from the side of the warehouse, aiming toward the SUV. Raphael shot him before Mara could scream. Then he reached the door, pulled it open, and dragged her into his arms as the vehicle behind her burst into flames. Heat slammed into her back. Raphael wrapped his body around hers, shielding her from glass, fire and shrapnel. For a moment, the whole world was orange light and his heart beat. Mara, he said against her hair. Answer me, I'm okay. Say it again, I'm okay. His arms tightened once, just once. Then he released her enough to look at her face. There was blood on his temple, his shoulder, his shirt. But the terror in his eyes was not for himself. It was for her. And that finally broke through every lie Mara had been telling herself. This was not control. Not only obsession, this was fear, raw human fear. The kind that made a ruthless man shield a woman with his own wounded body, and look at her afterward as if the universe had almost taken the only thing he had not meant to love. Belandi escaped. Barely. De Levin survived. Barely. Raphael collapsed 20 minutes after they reached the estate. Mara caught him before his knees hit the floor. For the next 18 hours, she became nothing but hands and focus. Clean the wounds, stop the bleeding, control the fever, antibiotics, fluids, pressure, orders. His private doctor tried to take over once. Mara glared at him so fiercely he stepped back. Matteo stayed near the door, silent and pale. Raphael drifted in and out of consciousness. Once near dawn, his fingers found Mara's wrist. You stayed, he murmured. I'm working, you stayed. He repeated. She did not answer, because he was right. She had stayed. Not because of fear. Not because of guards. Not because of danger. Because when he had fallen, something inside her had fallen with him. By the second night, his fever broke. Mara sat beside his bed, exhausted beyond thought. Raphael opened his eyes. Mara, I swear, if you say business required your attention, I'm sedating you. His mouth curved faintly. I was going to say thank you. Oh, she looked down at her hands. You're welcome. Silence settled between them. Soft this time. Not safe. Never safe. But honest. Raphael watched her. I have arranged for you to leave. Her head snapped up. What? A car will take you home. Or anywhere else you wish. Matteo can arrange protection discreetly. Without men on your roof. Mara stared at him. You're letting me go? His jaw tightened. I should have done it sooner. The words hurt more than they should have. Mara stood and walked to the window. Outside, dawn was breaking pale over the estate. Men moved through the grounds below, fewer now, their danger softened by distance. Why now? She asked. Because Belandi was right about one thing. She turned. Raphael's face was calm, but his eyes were not. I made you visible. I made you vulnerable. I told myself it was protection. But there were moments when I wanted it to be possession, because possession is easier than fear. Mara's throat tightened. He continued, voice low, I know how to command, how to punish, how to keep enemies away. I do not know how to love without trying to build walls around what I love. The word entered the room quietly. Love. Neither of them moved. Raphael looked down at his hands. But I will not make a cage and call it devotion. Mara's eyes burned. So what happens? You go home. You keep your career, your life, your choices. He looked at her then. And if one day you come back, it will be because you choose to. Not because I left you no road out. Mara wanted to speak. Nothing came. Raphael reached to the nightstand and picked up an envelope. Your debts remain paid. Not as leverage, as apology. I told you I didn't want. I know, he said. That is why the accounts are now in your name. No conditions, no contact required. She stared at him. You are impossible. Yes, and arrogant. Also yes. And manipulative. I am trying to be less so. A laugh escaped her, wet and broken. Raphael's expression softened. Mara crossed the room slowly. He watched her like a man awaiting sentencing. When she reached the bed, she did not kiss him. She took his hand. You don't get to decide what I feel by trying to be noble at the last minute. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope? Quickly buried. No, no. Her grip tightened. I am angry with you. You should be. I am scared of your world. You should be. I don't know if this is love, trauma, bad judgment, or the result of sleep deprivation. His mouth moved slightly. Mara, but I know how I felt when you fell. His face went still. And I know how I felt when Belandi asked you to send me away and you said no. His thumb moved over her knuckles. Any man would have said no. No, Mara whispered. Most men would have said yes and called it strategy. Raphael looked at her for a long moment. Then he lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to her fingers. It was not seductive, it was reverent. Mara closed her eyes. I need rules, she said. Name them. I keep my job. Yes, you don't interfere with my patients, my schedule, my apartment, or my grandmother unless I ask. Yes. No tracking my phone. A pause. Raphael, yes. No investigating everyone who speaks to me. Another pause. She narrowed her eyes. I will make an effort. Try again. His mouth curved. Yes. And no lying to protect me. That erased the smile. His gaze held hers. That will be difficult. Then practice. A long silence. Then he nodded. Yes, Mara breathed in. And if I walk into your world, I walk. You don't drag me. Raphael's eyes darkened with something deep and dangerous and tender all at once. No, he said. I will not drag you. She leaned closer. He did not move. That mattered. The choice was hers, so Mara kissed him. Softly at first. Carefully. Because he was still wounded. Because she was still angry. Because neither of them was healed enough to pretend this was simple. Raphael went utterly still. Then his hand rose to her cheek, stopping just before touching. Still asking. Still waiting. Mara turned her face into his palm. His breath changed. The kiss deepened, slow and restrained. Full of everything they had not said in the hospital. In the rain. In the gunfire. In the small kitchen, where protection had started to feel like something neither of them understood how to name. When she pulled back, Raphael rested his forehead against hers. I am not a good man, he whispered. I know. I have enemies. I know I will fail at gentleness, probably. His mouth curved against hers. But I will learn, he said. Mara looked into his eyes. For once, the most dangerous man in Philadelphia did not look like a king. He looked like a man asking for permission to stay. 3 weeks later, Stieng's medical center buzzed with rumors. Juzar Levin had resigned suddenly after what the hospital called an internal ethics investigation. No one knew where he had gone. Mara did not ask. Her rent was paid. Her grandmother's care was secure. Her row house had new locks, reinforced windows, and a security system so discreet it almost looked normal. Almost. There was one black sub at the corner now. Not 20. Mara had negotiated that down from 6. Raphael called it progress. She called it basic human boundaries. Their lives did not become simple. Nothing about Raphael de Luca could ever be simple. Sometimes he disappeared into meetings that left his eyes cold for hours afterward. Sometimes Mara patched cuts he refused to explain until she stared him into honesty. Sometimes she went days without seeing him, only to find a single white rose on her kitchen table and a note that said, I am trying not to overstep. This is me failing modestly. She kept every note. She did not tell him that. The final confrontation with Victor Belandi came not in a warehouse, but in public, at a charity hospital gala hosted in the grand ballroom of a luxury hotel overlooking the city. Mara attended because Agnes required senior staff representation. Raphael attended because Belandi did. He arrived in a black tuxedo, calm and devastating, with Matteo behind him and half the city pretending not to stare. Mara saw the room change when he entered. Laughter softened, men adjusted their posture. Women turned their heads. Power moved toward him without being summoned. And yet, his eyes found Mara first. She stood near the edge of the ballroom in a dark emerald dress she had bought herself. Because she refused Raphael's offer to send options, which had apparently meant half of Milan. His gaze moved over her once. Slowly. Not possessive, proud. That was worse. Victor Belandi approached her during the silent auction. He was elegant, silver-haired, smiling like a knife. "Miss Ellison," he said, "you look different without blood on your hands." Mara's body went cold, but she did not step back. "And you look shorter without men hiding behind fog." His smile thinned. "Raphael has made you brave." "No," she said. "Raphael just made you obvious." His eyes hardened. Across the room, Raphael turned. He knew somehow. He knew. Belandi leaned closer. "You think he loves you because he lets you argue. But men like Raphael do not love. They acquire." Mara held his gaze. "Then you don't know him as well as you think." "I know exactly what he is." "So do I." Raphael reached them then, silent as a storm. The ballroom seemed to fade around them. Belandi smiled. "De Luca. Victor, no threats tonight, no guns, no army at the door." Raphael's voice was calm. "No need." Belandi's smile flickered. Raphael stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the three of them could hear. "Your accounts are frozen. Your dock foremen have turned. Your nephew is speaking to federal agents. By sunrise you will have no rotes, no allies, and no name worth fearing." Belandi went pale. Mara stared at Raphael. He did not look at her. He kept his eyes on Belandi. "You attacked my home. You threatened my people. You used her." Raphael's voice lowered. "I considered killing you." Belandi swallowed. Raphael continued. "But Mara dislikes unnecessary bloodshed." Mara's breath caught, "So I chose humiliation instead." Around them, phones began buzzing. One by one, men across the ballroom looked down at their screens. Faces changed. Conversation stopped. Belandi's empire collapsed in real time beneath chandeliers and champagne. Not with gunfire, with exposure. Documents leaked. Accounts seized. Partnerships dissolved. Raphael had not brought an army into the ballroom. He had brought an ending. Belandi looked at Mara with hatred. "You made him weak." Mara looked at Raphael. He was still watching Belandi, cold and controlled. But his hand found hers. In front of everyone. In front of enemies, allies, donors, doctors, reporters, and every whispering mouth in Philadelphia. Raphael De Luca held Mara Ellison's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "No," Raphael said. His thumb moved gently over Mara's knuckles. "She made me choose what kind of strength was worth keeping." Belandi said nothing. There was nothing left to say. 6 months later, Mara stood on the back terrace of Raphael's estate as rain fell softly over the gardens. Not the violent rain of the night they met. Not the desperate rain outside her row house. This rain was quiet, almost kind. Behind her, the house glowed with warm light. Somewhere inside, Matteo was arguing with the chef about espresso. Raphael's men moved along the property. Fewer than before, less like an army and more like a distant fact of his life. Mara still worked at Agnes still lived part-time in her row house, still made Raphael texts before sending drivers, still threatened his men with medical lectures when they tried to hide injuries. Her grandmother had good days and bad days. On the good days, she called Raphael the handsome funeral director, which Mara found hilarious, and Raphael accepted with grave politeness. Life had not become safe, but it had become hers again. That was the difference. Raphael stepped onto the terrace behind her. She knew his footsteps now, measured. "Quiet, certain. You'll catch cold," he said. Mara smiled without turning. Says the man who once tried to attend a crime negotiation with an infected knife wound. "I have grown. You have learned to fear me." "That too." He came to stand beside her. For a while, they watched the rain together. Then he reached into his coat and held out a small velvet box. Mara stared at it. "Raphael, it is not what you think." She looked at him. He opened it. Inside was not a ring, it was a key. Old brass, heavy, beautiful. What is this? The key to my father's study, he said. The only room in this house no one enters without me. Mara's throat tightened. Raphael's voice softened. I once told myself that power meant never giving anyone access to the places that could hurt me. He placed the key in her palm. Then you walked into an emergency room half dead on your feet and treated me like a man instead of a monster. Mara closed her fingers around the key. His eyes held hers. You do not belong to me, he said. But every locked part of me belongs with you. If you still want it. Mara's eyes burned. You really are impossible, yes, and dramatic, yes, and still bad at following medical advice. I am improving. You are not. His smile appeared then, rare and real. Mara stepped closer, resting her hand gently against his chest. Beneath her palm, his heart beat steady. The same heart she had monitored under fever. The same heart she had heard through gunfire. The same heart the city feared, because it did not understand how fiercely it could love. I still have conditions, she whispered. I know, I still need my own life. I know, I still might yell at you in front of your men. His eyes warmed. I look forward to it. Mara laughed softly. Raphael lowered his forehead to hers. Rain fell around them. Silver in the dark. Once Mara Ellison had believed she was only good at saving other people. She had spent years stitching strangers together, while quietly leaving her own broken places untouched. Then a dangerous man walked into her emergency room with blood beneath his ribs and loneliness behind his eyes. She stitched his wounds in secret. He surrounded her door with 200 men. And somewhere between fear and fury, between blood and rain, between the life she knew and the world she never meant to enter, Mara discovered that being protected did not have to mean being owned. And Raphael De Luca, the most feared Mafia boss in Philadelphia, learned that devotion was not the same as control. Sometimes love was not a cage. Sometimes it was a key. And sometimes the woman who saved the monster did not make him less dangerous. She simply taught him where to place his hands when he finally chose to be gentle.